All right. Let's start with the famous Abraham Lincoln. I thought you would like it. At least the American would like it. So this is what Abraham Lincoln said, and he said, I can see how it might be possible for a man to look down upon the earth and be an atheist. That is what we want to address, theodicy. But I cannot conceive how he could look up into heaven and say that there is no God. And what I like about this is your quote 35a, because I made a mistake in my numbers, so I had to put an A. So it's not because it's for some fancy reasons or anything. It's just because I blew it. And I actually don't want to type all the number all over again. So you can call that laziness if you want. But okay, so he's making a few points in there that's interesting to help us understand the introduction of theodicy. Number one, that we understand that people can be atheists and look, when they look here. I mean, we are not atheists, obviously, but we understand too. I mean, I have questions, when I see the mess in the world, and we can explain, and at the end of the theodicy today, I think we will have explained some kind of evil and other kinds of evil, but in the same times, there are some things, I know, for example, that something that troubles me, not that I don't trust God, but I'm just saying why, it's still in your heart, you're troubled, just like we see in the Psalms. There is this sickness that touch, some sickness that touch children that puts them to a lot of suffering. I don't know why would God permit that. And even as Christians, we do have the questions. So we understand. I mean, it's not like we don't care. So what I'm saying by that, and what I like about what he says, is that because it is an emotional argument, because it is something that is sensitive, and because we want to be careful with our attitude, then we need to take in consideration that maybe we need to hear what he has to say about that. Maybe it's something deep for him or for her. Maybe it's something that he really feels he wants an answer for. It's not just, well, God loves you. Well, he does, but explain to me. Maybe sometimes people will raise up the question because they really have a real answer. Now, what he says also, I cannot conceive how he can look up into the heavens and say that there is no God. That is what we said about the arguments earlier. Some arguments are there, and how can you look at nature and say that there is no God? We've made the cosmological argument, we talked about theological argument, we argued against the mediocrity principle, and we did some of that. But number three, the third point that actually, maybe he's not making it, but we can draw that from his quote, is that I think sometimes people are looking down at the earth because they don't want to look up to heaven. I'm just wondering sometimes how much the argument from evil is an excuse not to believe in God. I'm not saying that it's every time the case, but look at what he says. I can see how it might be possible for a man to look down upon the earth and be an atheist. So we understand if you are one, but if you look up into the heavens, then you should not be one. And that's it's a one perspective. I'm just looking one way, but I'm not looking up. So basically, what we want to do is help them look up. Not, to go away with the argument, not to go away with reality, not that say that it's meaningless, but at the same time, we want to help you look up. This is what we want to do. But by looking up, we don't want you to avoid reality. But remember we said yesterday about reality and truth. That's real. There is real evil in the world, but the truth is there is something else beyond that, and this is what we want to bring up. So the reason why I chose to talk about theodicy again is because I want to bring up, to implement some of the principles that we brought up in the beginning of the week. So the reasons why we are making some actual arguments in apologetics is I want to show you how we can respect the principles we've learned together and how to do a biblical apologetics and how it works really when it comes down to real apologetics arguments. We've done that with atheisms. Now we're going to do it with theodicy. Now, who knows what theodicy means? Well, you raise your hand. If you don't want to say it, just... Okay, so that's the argument from evil. Okay? But what is a theodicy? Is it the arguments or is it something else? I help you. A theodicy is an answer to an argument. It comes from two Greek words. You should recognize them if you've done some Greek. The first one is God, and the other one is justice or righteousness. So a theodicy is an argument or an attempt to answer the argument from evil by showing that God is righteous. So a theodicy, and the word theodicy was coined the first time by a German philosopher. His name is Leibniz, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. And he's actually the first one that really wrote about theodicy in an extensive way. He has a book, a big book. You have it in English and it's in French. It's German also. But it's an interesting book, and though I don't agree with him because he uses too much the idea of probabilities and possibilities, which I don't believe that is compatible with God's sovereignty in many ways. But he actually says his main arguments is saying that God created the best of all possible worlds. He could have created a world without free being and with free being. He decided to create a world with free beings. And free beings means that they had to be able to create, let's say, two worlds, one with free beings that can really choose and one with free beings that can choose some things and not everything. He chose to create a world but with free beings that could choose whatever they wanted. And blah, blah, blah. And by doing that, he's developed, it's a simple way to put the argument, but it's what he makes, the argument he makes is that we are in the best possible world. And the reason why it's a mess is because we made it a mess. So, but I just give you the name not for the argument because this is not the argument we want to use today, but because he's the first one that actually coined the word theodicy. So let's go back to our good friend Abraham Lincoln. Did you see the movie, Lincoln? Some of you see the movie? If you haven't, you should. We went with Pastor Ed and Kaya, and we really had a good time. Okay, so I can see how it might be possible for a man to look down upon the earth and be an atheist, so we understand that. Number two, we don't understand why when they look up in the heavens, they are not believers, because there is enough arguments, and we are wondering why they're looking down and never looking up. Is it because they can't, or is it because they don't want? That's something we need to think about also. Now, we said first, I think we agree with Abraham Lincoln. You know, when we look about, I mean, if I look down upon the earth, I am not an atheist, but I am mad. As a Christian, I am mad. I am mad at the news, I'm mad at the politicians, I am mad at me, I made wrong decisions, and I'm mad at never at my wife, it never happened, but I mean, it could, you know, it's for some other people, but not for me, because I have a perfect wife, so I cannot be mad. But, you know, we could be mad of things around, you know, but the thing is, the Bible is filled with people who are wondering, and there's one question that people ask all over the Bible, and when we read the Bible, we know it's true. We know it to be true. Come on. That is a big question in the Bible. Why, Lord? And basically, this is what Abraham Lincoln is saying. I can understand that. Why? If you read Psalm 10, Psalm 35, Psalm 44, Psalm 73, and some other Psalms that you find in the Bible, the question why is all over the place. All over the place. So I would say this is something you need to say to the person you are in front of you. I understand what you're saying. And maybe if you can, why don't you learn the quote by Abraham Lincoln and just say, you know what, I think Abraham Lincoln, who was a Christian, and the biblical authors in the Old Testament especially, they are asking the same questions. And if you read the book of Revelations, there is also some questions asked. John is crying, he's not understanding, he's wondering why, because he's facing suffering for the future. And we always wonder why, because we're thinking, because we are human beings, we know the pain. And we know how much the pain can affect the people we love too. So we look around us and we're thinking, can there be another way? Can you find another way? And let's read about, Psalm 73. Maybe can you read Psalm 73? The whole Psalm, please.
Okay.
17 verses.
73, 17 verse? Just the first 17?
Yeah.
That's 28.
Yeah, there's 28 verses, right?
Yeah, okay.
Just read the 17th first verse.
The 17th verse.
No, one through 17.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry, it's my French accent.
I know, it's okay.
I know,
I forgive you.
Thank you. I'm relieved.
Truly, God is good to Israel, to such as are pure in heart. But as for me, my feet had almost stumbled, my steps had nearly slipped. For I was envious of the boastful when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. For there are no pangs in their death, but their strength is firm. They are not in trouble as other men, nor are they plagued like other men. Therefore pride serves as their necklace. Violence covers them like a garment. Their eyes bulge with abundance. They have more than heart could wish. They scoff and speak wickedly concerning oppression. They speak loftily. They set their mouth against the heavens, and their tongue walks through the earth. Therefore his people return here, and waters of a full cup are drained by them. And they say, how does God know? And is there knowledge in the Most High? Behold, these are ungodly, who are always at ease. They increase in riches. Surely I have cleansed my heart in vain, and washed my hands in innocence. For all day long I have been plagued, and chastened every morning. If I had said, I will speak thus, behold, I would have been untrue to the generation of your children. When I thought how to understand this, it was too painful for me. Until I went into the sanctuary of God, then I understood their end.
Thank you. So, that is a very good psalm, I think, because to me, this psalm sums up the arguments that I want to develop against the argument from evil. A few things, that I want to make, a few points we want to make before we start, because I don't know if I will be able to actually start the argument, because we already put 20 minutes. But number one, people ask, why evil in the world, right? This is what they're asking, but they are asking for something else sometimes. Number one, they're asking, why is not evil stopped? I think we find this in the chapter also. Number two, they are also asking why evildoers are not judged. That's another, which is contradictory to many people who says that they don't accept the idea of God with hell. Well, you cannot have it both ways. Either you want God to deal with the evildoers or you don't. And if you want God to deal with evildoers, then there has to be a hell. And think about, Hitler. He got away with the judgment because he committed suicide. People are mad about this. Well, you would be relieved to know that maybe he will be judged at some point. Yes, I would. That's the point, is that either you want evildoers to be judged or you don't. And if you don't, then don't ask the question why. If you ask the question why, then accept the idea of God judging people in hell. So, what I'm saying by that is when people ask you, how can you, explain to me, what is your answer as a Christian? Again, they're asking you as a Christian, so you want to give a biblical answer, but also try to narrow down a little bit exactly what the problem is. And also later in the chapter, he says, this is what the wicked are like, always carefree, they increase in wealth. Surely in vain I have kept my heart pure. In vain I have washed my hands in innocence. And what the writer is saying here is actually saying that I'm guilty too, actually. And I'm wondering sometimes how much blaming on God the evil is not a way for man to get away with it. And that, you need to discuss that too when you come to discussions. Okay, are you saying that everything that happens in the world is because of God only? Don't you think you and I have some kind of responsibility? We do have some responsibility, and we need to make sure that this is what we want to bring up. And then last, I'm saying a French word now. I must be getting tired. If you hear me speak French, I'm not speaking in tongues. It's just because I'm losing my mind. At the end, verse 17, he says, when I tried to understand all this, it was oppressive to me till I entered the sanctuary of God. Then I understood their final destiny. What happened to the writer is he actually went to God about this. And do you have a problem with evil in the world? I do. That it bothers me to the point where I don't trust God. It does not. Why? Because I'm going to the sanctuary of God. I'm going to the sanctuary. And I think if it's true for the psalmists, if it's true for us, it has to be true for the unbeliever too. What I need to do is, and this is where Pastor Pete would be happy because now we can preach the gospel. What we want to do is to show them Christ. We want to show them God. And meaning by that is there is an answer. And again, remember what we said. There is many arguments out there about theodicy. But none of them will be sufficient for everyone. Some people will understand it, some won't. You find another one, the one who liked the other one, they won't like this one, but some were not touched by this one, were touched by the other one. So you will never find an argument that will be pleasing to everyone, but at least you need to find one that is pleasing to you. Because if it is pleasing to you, then you are ready to defend it. And I think, personally, that the only thing that really satisfies me is to get some knowledge that does not come from me alone. If I want to get settled the issue of evil, I need to hear from God. And this is exactly what happened here in Psalm 73. In verse 17, he heard from God. He went into the sanctuary of God. Then I understood the final destiny. And we will talk later about what we call the eschatology of evil. There is an end to it. This is exactly what relieved him. There will be an end to evil. There will be an end to evildoers. If this is what you need to hear, you're going to hear this, because this is what the Bible says. So let's go, and what we'll do is we'll just present the arguments quickly, and then we'll have a break, and we'll continue that tomorrow, because tonight we have the science night with Pastor Klika, and tomorrow science discussion with Pastor Norman. So what are the arguments? Number one, premise number one, if God were all-powerful, he would be able to prevent evil. Do we agree with that? We agree with that. Premise number 2, if God were all good, he would desire to prevent evil. I tend to agree with that too. That needs to be explained a little more, but we'll come back to it a little bit. Conclusion A, so if God were both all-powerful and all good, there would be no evil. That we don't agree with. Premise 3, but there is evil. Conclusion B, therefore, there is no all-powerful, all-no-good God. The class is over. This is the conclusion. So there is many things we want to say about this. I'm just going to talk about the argument itself, and then we will go about explaining really what it means. But do we agree with premise 1? Yes, we do. Do we agree with premise 2? To agree with this, we would have to be in God's mind. Is it possible that God would not prevent evil, though he is all good and though he is all powerful? Well, that premise number 2 doesn't make any sense. Because for me to actually say that, I need to first know that God exists, believe that he does, and understand exactly who he is, and have the exact same infinite mind that he does to think that he cannot have any reason why he would not prevent evil. That I can have. I can't. So conclusion A doesn't stand. Premise 3, there is evil. We agree with that. That is not debatable. And conclusion B, therefore, there is no all-powerful, no all-good God. That doesn't make any sense. Because if there is a God who is all-powerful, and if there is a God who is all good, maybe evil can be used by God. And this is what we want to explain later. But the idea is a few points before we close and ask for questions about this. But number one thing, and this argument actually, I think it's maybe the best formulation I found. Because many people say the conclusion B will be big for, therefore there is no God. Well, the argument does not prove that there is no God. The argument, if valid and sound, which is not the case, if valid and sound, might prove that we have the wrong definition of who God is. Maybe he is not all-powerful and he is all good. Maybe he is not all good, but he is all-powerful. But that argument never proves that God does not exist. That is the first point we need to make. It does not exclude the existence of God. That is very, very important for us to understand that. No. Can I say what again? That the argument does not prove that God exists? Well, think about this. The idea is that if God is all-powerful, then he can prevent evil. If God is all good, he wants to prevent evil. There is evil, so God does not exist. This is what people say. So I put the better argument on here to give the benefit of the doubt to people, because they are saying therefore there is no all-powerful and all-good God. So there has to be a God, but he's not all-powerful or he's not all-good. But some people are using the argument to say that God does not exist. No. What your argument is saying, if valid and sound, that maybe God is powerful but not good, or maybe God is good and not powerful, but it does not prove that God does not exist, right? So he actually attacks the idea and the definition and the attributes we find in the Bible about God. So he actually attacks Christianity and its definition of who God is, but it cannot be used to attack the existence of God. Does it make sense? No, this is what we're saying. Should I say it again? What they're saying here, what this argument, the way it's presented by the end, the conclusion B, they cannot be all-powerful and all-good God, that argument is okay. I can receive that and debate that. But people who are changing the conclusion B by saying there cannot be any God, this is where we don't agree. That argument cannot be used to say that God does not exist. That's what we're saying. Now, the fact that maybe there is a God, but he's not powerful or he's not good, that's a different debate. But people cannot use that argument to say that there is no God. Pastor Tero?
But if you look at this argument, it's very irrational.
Yes.
If you're looking at the words, there's reading good and evil.
Yes.
And if God is not existing, those things shouldn't be exist at all. So it's in my eyes, it's pretty much nonsense, the whole
Yeah,
story.
it is a nonsense argument. I totally agree with you. And I think Rabbi Zacharias makes that point very clear, and we will quote him tomorrow. But so you're anticipating a little bit about the class, which is fine, because I think I can say that. But again, and this is not a critic against Rabbi Zacharias. I have a lot of respect for him. But he does, at this point, I don't know how he does it now, but in the 90s, I think he heard the questions, but he didn't really hear the questions. Many times when let's find Rabbi Zacharias. Where is Rabbi? Quote 36. This is Rabbi Zacharias is saying. And this is what you're saying, right? So when you say there is too much evil in this world, you assume there is good, right? If there is evil, there has to be good. When you assume there is good, you assume there is such a thing as a moral law on the basis of which we differentiate between good and evil. But if you assume a moral law, you must also posit a moral lawgiver, but that's who you are trying to disprove and not prove. But because if there is no moral lawgiver, there is no moral law. If there is no moral law, there is no good. If there is no good, there is no evil. What is your question? I think this is a great argument. And it's actually saying what you're saying, is that your question does not stand because you are trying to prove there is no good God, but you're trying to prove it without any lawgiver that would permit you to say there is good and evil. And I think Rabbi Zacharias is totally right by saying this. But, again, what did we say earlier? Where do you see the problem here? I want to hear what you have to say. Pastor Alto, you look like you want to say something. What is this?
Deceive.
Hmm?
They say in America that looks can be deceiving.
Looks can be deceiving.
Yeah, I really liked your. I was wondering all the time when you brought up the C.S. Lewis's axiological argument, like why you're bringing it, like you have already a better way of saying it, and I think like that's part of the problem.
Thank you. You should be able to know. We spoke about methods. I advocated something that you and I should be doing. So by now you should be able to see where the problem is. Better.
I don't know if I understand properly, but it seems to me that he's like closing the doors to speak about God.
Exactly. The question is not whether I have the right to ask the question as a non-believer. The question is whether you as Christians can answer the question. So by saying to me, I'm asking you a question, and by saying to me I don't have the right to ask it, you're not answering my question. So you're losing an opportunity to preach the gospel. That's what exactly Peter said. So, but do I think this is wrong to do it? No, I'm thinking he's totally right to do it. He should do this because we've been doing that so far. We've been challenging the unbeliever's right to say what he says, and then we've been using our answers in a defensive apologetics to show that we have a case for God. So we need to do both. But the problem is that many apologists are stopping right there. Your argument does not make any sense. You should not be able to ask the questions because you have no ground to differentiate between good and evil. So what is your question? That is a great way to put it. But once I said that, I need to move on and explain. You want to say so? No? Okay. You agree? Ah, yes. So you see, the thing is, again, it's not a critic. I'm just saying we need to think about this. The question that the guy is asking is, how can you, as a Christian, answer my question? Not debating whether or not I have the right to ask the questions. Now you made a point I should not be asking the questions. Now you make me think about this. But still, if you are taking away my foundations for the right to ask the questions, I find myself on sinking sand. Are you going to let me drown, or are you going to help me? I want to help you. So I think your point is excellent. We need to show him that his question is not valid. But still, now you're sinking, let me throw you a life vest. Andy, you want to say something?
So this isn't the end of the argument, you're saying, right?
That should not be the end of the argument.
Okay, that I didn't understand. And also, this is also an insensitive approach, right? Wouldn't you say, like, we're saying, right, like, what is your question? That's
Yes.
the conclusion of this, right?
Yes.
So if the person does have a deeper issue that is
Yes.
real, then we wouldn't use this.
Well, not that I wouldn't use this, but if I would do this, I would still have to make. I would use the quote or the argument from Ravi Zacharias or what Pastor Tero said to make a point. Just like as with atheism, we made a point that you're saying you're having reason and I have faith, and the two are opposites. But you have no ground for reliability of your reason. I do. Okay. So now this is once we made that clear. Let me tell you why I think I have a ground for reason. So who stands better? Obviously, belief in God and Christianity stands better than atheism. Same thing here. Well, we did earlier. We said with the quote with Abraham Lincoln, we want to know what is he asking? Do you want evil to stop? Do you want evildoers to be judged? Or are you trying to blame God for something that we're doing? What are you trying to say? So that is very good to ask, also challenge, but there is a way to do it. There is an attitude. And sometimes, okay, but before you ask the questions, on what ground are you asking the questions? Because you believe there is no God. So if there is no God, you have no ground for ethics. We talked about that already. So you understand that you should not be able to ask the questions on your presuppositions, on your beliefs. Now, on my ground, your question is totally valid. I have the same questions, and then move on with my answer. But I should not stop by saying, okay, you're disqualified to ask the question. Because what he wants to know is what I think about this. And I have the opportunity to preach Christ. Pastor Stan?
Exactly. I think, like, if we're initiating this conversation with a person, and for us to imagine then during our conversation that he is saying what he's saying regarding his doubt about God as a personal attack on me is sort of stupid on my part. He doesn't care about me. He has an issue, and I shouldn't take it like as a personal
Yes.
thing, but actually like see in him we should be the ones that are looking and seeing behind what he's really saying.
Yes.
And like I remember one time when I was in Romania, and a girl said, and this is not really on the same line, but just to say this point, that this girl said, like, well, I don't need love. I don't need to be loved. I don't want to be loved. I don't want to have love. I don't care if anybody loves me. And there was another missionary that was with me, and the missionary got like really like offended personally that this girl would say that, and almost like wanted to move away, because just in case God would send a thunderbolt down from heaven to consume all of us that were standing there. but actually, like, you know, well, then this person then moved on, the other missionary, but I stayed and talked with this girl, but it was about like 15 minutes later, she was weeping, because of course, if you see I mean, why is she saying that? Is there's a real wound, there's a real hurt and a real emptiness, and she's saying these things, but it might be like, or he or she, you know, for whatever reason, whether it's I don't need to be loved, or I don't believe in God, but there's something that's deeper.
Yes. Yeah, we need to see beyond, you know, the first contact. There is a need behind. You know, it's you know, we go back to about putting the blame on God, and we need to finish because it's almost time. But I've always been intrigued by people. You know, when there is a crime committed, you know, and something happens, and people can never mourn until the trial is over. Have you ever seen that? You know, somebody in your family has been killed, or, you know, whatever, and then people say, I need the trial. What are you expecting for the trial? I need to try to finish my mourning. I don't understand that. In a sense, I mean, why? Because we need to have the blame put on somebody, and then this is over. I think this is the same psychological mechanism that we see in people's mind. They need to blame someone for the mess around here. And if I blame somebody else, easy, then I need to blame myself also, because when it comes down to me and God, if I blame another man, I am included because I'm a part of humanity. If it's another man who committed a crime, then it's not me, I'm fine. But when it comes down to evil in the world, then people would rather blame God than blame themselves. So it's the same mechanism. It's some kind of a defense mechanism. Yes. Edwige, and then we'll conclude.
I was just thinking that it's come back to the fact that some people have legitimate question and some have illegitimate.
Yes.
Some people, they will ask the question but not conclude that God doesn't exist.
Yes.
So they have a deep, like,
Yes.
you need to address that and love them. Some people, they really want to conclude that God doesn't exist. And that's like, we bring the argument, like, you can use it and say, your thinking is not, how to say that? Yeah, you understand?
Yes.
So you have two kinds of situations.
Yes.
Some people really they are looking for an answer, and some people
Yes.
just want to argue.
Yes. And again, don't we agree that, I mean, we speak to everyone, but if we are led by the Holy Spirit, then we are led to spend time with people and sometimes to stop conversation with other people. Because what we really want is actually talk to people that we've been sent to. Because those people that we've been sent to are being prepared by God. And some others we've been sent to also are not prepared, but what we are going to say will be help in the preparing process. And some people we just randomly, you know, find and just give a tract, and there is no special leading by God in a sense. And then there will be a distraction rather than anything else. And I can sense that I need to sense and discern that and move on and talk to somebody else. So again, as we said earlier, I never feel that I have to answer questions. I don't have to. Because if the guy at the end of the conversation thinks he won the argument, doesn't make any difference to me. I don't care. Because again, I'm not here to win an argument. I'm not here to make a point. I'm here to preach the gospel. And if I can't, at least I want to show you something from God. And if I can do that, I can only do that by being humble, not by being proud. And many people, and actually I said several times, I believe some apologists, though they are not, when they debate, at the end of it, even as a Christian, I'm thinking, wow, if I would not be a Christian, I would not like the guy because he has an answer for everything and he's proud about it. Even though he's not, maybe. But he looks like he is. Because sometimes we are so picky. I don't know, you know, one last thing, but sometimes people don't like Christians, not because they have convictions, because they are lousy in the way they defend it. You know, like, you know, we're trying to have non-believers think like Christians, but a non-believer cannot think like Christians. If I would not be Christians, maybe I would have voted for gay marriage. The reason why I'm against it, because I'm a Christian. That's it. Maybe I would be happy that to vote for abortion too if I would not be Christians. I would go with the program. So don't expect a non-believer to agree with you. All right. Thank you very much. See you tonight at 5.